Media being part of the society in which we live in, I would think much as they would want to divorce themselves, it becomes difficult. And like Dr. said again, who owns media in this country? You know, big time. Most of them are politicians. Yes. They are businessmen, politicians, and they don't start with media houses simply because of the public interest orientation, but because some of them want to use them for their political business deals. So many of our colleagues get those calls and say, when is my news coming? You know, so those are practical challenges. But yes. I can tell you for free. Again, look at even the, I mean, here politics seem to preoccupy a big chunk of our life and our thinking and the many things. It drives a lot of the discussions. The discussions we do. So media being part of that society also. But again, people only look at KBC, maybe for example, the first news item, second, third, which might be political, or the newspapers, page 1 and 2. But if you go deep inside, KBC still does a lot of programs that are development, that are not political. Yeah. But people are stuck with the first news item or the page 1 stories. Because if you go to most of these publications, you get a lot of specialized reporting, specialized pages, business pages. I mean, we have a whole business daily, a newspaper that sells so well. So people also should not be judgmental in the sense that when you just see KBC news item 1, it was on the politician, then we say it's all political. Let's also be fair and engage more with content that KBC does on the 24 hours. Yes. Then we say they are biased maybe. And I'm using KBC because I'm in KBC, but it's generally, that's what's in our news. That most of us look at page 1 or 2 or just listen to the news item on a radio or a TV and say, our media is full of politics. Yes. But I can tell you, media has more things that if you engage more and listen to more of their programs, that will be surprised. Now,
you know, the media plays the role of just helping even the viewer interpret, and it shapes the opinion. Do you think we're doing a good job in terms of, you know, being objective and not biased? Okay. Because most of the time you will hear hii station wanaongelea tu hii, wanakuanga hivyo. Just as you're saying, this station, they talk about this, wanakuanga tu hivyo, but you haven't really taken the time to listen to other content. Now, who is to blame in such a situation? Is it the side of the audience or the practitioners themselves in terms of being objective and not being biased, in terms of even the timing and the content that is put out there?
I think, Jen, for me, what I would say, but first, if you'd allow me to respond, because Victor said that media is doing a very good job reporting politics. But if we just focus on what you mean by politics, because when you look at development, that's still politics. When you look at what government is doing in terms of probably its big four agenda, what ministries are doing, what other development agencies are doing, that is politics. But then the question is, what really makes media focus on conflict-driven politics? We know that politics sells. And then my challenge will be for the media to find a balance between the politics that sells, so that's the page 1 story, and the other developmental politics that's good for the society. So many good things are happening, which is political, because any action which is being taken by political actors basically is politics. But we have this obsession, and you know, media is very good at agenda setting, because the problem we have, maybe as a response to your second question, is that most audiences, or the common person, believes that what the media says basically is what matters most. And media has probably, we should say, has created this kind of desire by audiences that if I don't see politics, then I don't think anything is happening in Kenya. So I think I'd throw back the challenge people like Victor, Media Council of Kenya, and the reporters yourself, that there's so much more that you can report upon apart from politics. And now talking from a communication point of view, when you look at media, politics, and society, it's not only the journalists basically who are players when talking about reporting. You have the practitioners like me, communication practitioners, who are working for organizations. Some of these organizations are political. And then the challenge is that as people working in such organizations, we need to package our story in such a way that it responds to the needs of the media industry. Because again, some of us have given up as practitioners that because what sells is politics, then probably I'll not engage in trying to package and share whatever nice story that my organization is dealing with to the media. And I think the challenge is that there are 3 players when you talk about media, politics, and reporting, that practitioners basically have a role, and they need to engage media more, so that media understand that beyond the politics, there are other good stories being passed around. And maybe one of the avenues that organizations have are the websites. How much are you using your tools of communication as an organization, like the website, like your Twitter handle, like the Facebook, to ensure that the stories that matter are able to reach Kenyans? Because for once, probably, the organization can set the agenda for the media, and the media will pick from there. Yes.
But just as Victor is saying, you know, it's so hard to separate politics from the daily operations of any person. You cannot blame the media when it comes to, you know, wanting to put politics at the forefront.
And what I'm thinking, like Thad is saying, I look at it like the point you raised, the last point. Almost all the politicians I know in this country have a PR or a communication person alongside them. These are the people who advise them to talk politics. So at what level do we then, because media is not fiction writing, it's writing that you base on a source, on what somebody said. And if the communication consultants that work with ministers, I mean with the politicians, drive the messages that these people give, how else does, how else does media then change the narrative? Because I listen and I attend some of those, and you will hear is a launch of maybe a project somewhere which is purely development. Then you hear their communication person telling them, ongea siasa kidogo, ongea siasa kidogo, and you see that's the bite that maybe eventually gets it. So again, that also becomes the communication people who work alongside our minister and our policy makers also have, like the girl said, made it appear like it's only politics or political news that comes out, so that immediately they finish the official. In fact, right now, the people really even write speeches. I mean, staff that will give you data on what some of these organizations are. Yes, so they will always, they finish, even look at the coverage or the presentation of the Big Four agenda. We rarely present the Big Four agenda orienting into the Vision 2030 that looks at development. But it's now have been reduced to purely a legacy issue, a political legacy issue that we are looking at Big Four as a legacy issue. So it has been politicized to a level that you don't see the development in it yet when it starts. And it's the communication people who are presenting it in this manner. What else does media do?
Now, just as he's saying, as a PR practitioner, where do you draw the line when it comes to being thorough and sensationalism?
Okay, thank you. And I want to respond to what Victor is saying, the communication people. And I like the use of the word communication people. Because when we talk about communication people, it means people purporting to be doing communication. That's one of the challenges we have in political communication in Kenya today.
Quacks. We're talking
about quacks. And that is a problem that as Public Relations Society of Kenya, we're trying to tackle and trying to challenge. We have a bill that we're engaging with the Minister of ICT, which is supposed to regulate the industry. The problem we have is that anyone who can be able to dress smartly, probably,
and talk,
who is able to talk nice English, is they profile themselves as communication professionals. Because look at any public officer, look at the politicians. Look at cabinet secretaries. Who are the communication advisors? Are they professionals? And I would be very confidently say here today that none of them is a member of the Public Relations Society of Kenya. And those are the people we want to weed out of this industry, because they're the ones giving us a bad name. Because some of them have never attended any school of journalism. They've never studied for a degree in communication or its related studies. They are not registered with PRSK. They do not attend any of our CPD programs. Basically, they do not engage in any strategic communication or even empowering or improving their skills. So this is one area that we want to focus on. So if we have professionals driving the discourse, if we have professionals driving the development agenda, if we have professionals driving the government agenda in terms of communication, then I think that's something we're going to work on. And I'm glad the government realizes that. See, from the formation of this task force, which is supposed to look at the state of government communication. And I think that's the David McCarley led task force. So out of that, you can see that there's a need, and the good thing is that PRSK is trying to do something about it. We have a bill that's going to regulate the industry. We're not going to lock out anyone, but we're going to tell you that if you want to be recognized as a communication professional, so that Victor here stops talking about communication people. Now we talk about communication professional and practitioner. Somebody who is registered, somebody who is given a code of ethics they're supposed to adhere to, and above all, somebody who has searched for a certification. Because that's the other thing that we're trying to do. We want to certify practitioners so that we can tell the industry that, wait a minute here, if you want somebody to deliver for you the kind of communication you need, strategic communication, they need to be certified by the Public Relations Authority of Kenya. So for me, what Victor raises is a very important issue, that perhaps part of the problem we have, and which again the media is thriving on, is because the people who purport, I'm using the word purport deliberately, to package and engage the media on behalf of the political, because even government itself is a political bureaucracy. Yeah, basically are people who are short of the necessary skills and capacity. And I think that's something we need to deal with. Thank you.
And I thanks. And I continuously look at now the way we engage. Do we have communication people, the experts? Do we have media relations officers? You know, so that what it drives, if I looked at the speech of a policymaker and looked at the speech and the content, is it content, message that helps people understand the development, the things the ministry or the agency is doing?
Yeah.
Or do I look at a person who just wanted to be on the media? You know, so that the demand and supply side must be balanced.
Yeah.
That we are getting good content, that we are getting good, but it's media that is diluting it and just going to politics, then we'll start engaging. But if even from the source, you find message that is purely not meant for any content that doesn't help anybody. Content I've seen, I can tell you for free, I have done a content analysis of a very senior person in this country, and 17 of his speeches are cut and paste, return to sender, just repetition. Even the people who write those speeches never even take time to even just update. They just change the venue and the meeting, but the content 17,
exactly,
and he has a whole team of communication people. So then we are saying, what does media do? The media will go now to poll because it's the same information. We created 200 jobs, we created 200, the same thing.
Yeah.
When available data is saying something else, but the person is still stuck with a speech he read in February. So the easier thing for the media is to pick the political thing he said that might be relevant and move on. But that does not exonerate media from doing, and I know there are a lot of programs I listen to in most of our media, which are full content, specialized, nice information that you read, and you feel good. I mean, we have seen our colleagues who are in class picking media clips, media stories to enrich the researches they are doing. That tells you that there are a lot of people in the media who are doing serious content searching and the data driven. But that does not mean we are 100%.
Yeah.
We still have room to improve, to do more than what we are doing. And I can just give you like an example, the Auditor General reports.
Yeah.
Look at it, a lot of us, media sometimes, we pick very little information and hide others, and it's an area that people need to engage. For the report when it comes out, unsupported expenditure, lost money, you know, those things mean different things. But many of us, when we get it, it's just a ministry lost 2 billion, another one lost 3. But what were the specifics in that report that would then help people understand? So we need to do more also.
Now,
so that
doesn't that boil back to now the institutions?
Yes, actually what Victor says, it's about the institutions, and it's time that leadership of institutions realize that communications is beyond media relations, it's beyond deadlines. Because the problem we have is that let's talk about most CEOs or head of institutions. They are actually obsessed with making to the news. They don't want to see their picture there, they don't want to see their story there, and sometimes they even look at the content. What somebody's interested is, picha yangu ilikuwa kwa gazeti. Then they exited the entire day. So they need to understand that communication, especially strategic communication, now that you're talking development for public institutions, is beyond the leader. It's basically about what outcomes, what impact of the programs created in society. And that one requires proper planning. And part of the limitations we have in the industry is the way the communication departments are placed within ministries, within agencies. They are being placed at a very low level, which is at a technical level. And you know, most organizations, especially leadership, have this assumption that the job of a communication person is to organize for probably snacks when they have visitors.
Na kuongea.
Kuongea, a master of ceremony.
Yeah.
To take a few pictures.
Upload on social media.
Upload on social media, but that's beyond that. Communication means much more. Because when you talk about strategic communication, especially for public institutions and any other institution, the basic communication is supposed to do 3 things. It's supposed to create awareness. It's supposed to change attitudes. And it's supposed to lead people for action, into carrying out some action. But most importantly, it's supposed to communicate outcomes of programs. I think that's where we miss it. Most of us are basically being focused on awareness. Look at Look at the, just go to the print media today. You will get an advertorial which is about 2-3 pages in small print, run by institutions. And you find that 3/4 of that advert is basically has some pictures or photos of the top leadership, top management, and very little about the outcomes of the programs. And I think that is the problem that hails what I would call public sector communication, in that we are not communicating for outcomes. And secondly, we have not created that enabling environment for communication specialists or professionals to thrive and be able to advise organizations. So I'd urge them, number one, is that we need to rethink as to where do they place communication. It needs to be at a management level, so that when issues are being discussed, that is the planning stage, when the organization is planning about its activities for the year, its strategic plan development, then the voice of the communication person is being heard. But again, I think the challenge is that for communication practitioners, they need to scale up. Yes, they need to live up to the expectations, so that when you get into that boardroom and then the discussion is going on, then there's need for you to articulate issues that are able to solve organizational problems, society problems. Because I think that is the main focus of communication. Communication is supposed to help organizations solve their problems, not just creating awareness. It's basically about contributing to the bottom line of the organization.
Now, Victor, from where you stand, what more do you feel a media practitioner needs to do when it comes to how we are viewed and the reality on ground? Because there are some who are not putting in the work, just putting in the time to be seen, but there are those who are putting in the work, the time, and the content, and they're not being recognized for that. What more do you feel does such people need to do to just be able to bring the narrative that is actually true out there, as opposed to this fallacy that is out there, that the media only focuses on these things that they have personal vested interests in?
Thank you. It's difficult to divorce media from those. You know, there are inherent biases you are born. You are born Jen. You were born somewhere. You went to a particular school. You go to a particular church. Those factors have an influence in the way you look at things.
Yeah.
So to us, is so long as journalists or media sticks to the truth, that's the bare minimum that give people the truth. Seek and report the truth. Truth that is not influenced by where you were born, where you went to school, where you go to church, you know, or which tribe you come from. So long as you stick to the truth, and truth that says affects public interest, because media is for public interest. The small things that because you are looking for a tender from the governor and you missed it as a journalist, then now you are just hitting the governor every day simply because you missed or your aunt missed a tender. That's not public interest. That's not what journalism is. Journalism is focusing on issues. And that thing you are raising is what we are discussing with journalists. Yes, there's a story, but how do you link it to the people? The disconnect. There's a very big, media has become a very elitist. Yet the people we think we are targeting are now on their Twitter and Instagram. They no longer follow mass media. So we have disconnected ourselves. We need to retouch ourselves. What are these stories that would the general public deal with? And it doesn't mean you simplify, I mean, you become simplistic, but you can simplify and relate your stories. If, for example, somebody is talking about loss of 2 billion, for example, in a minute. 2 billion is largely a Nairobi issue. My grandmother in the village, 2 billion, he hasn't feel, so he doesn't feel it. But there's a way you can write the same loss of the 2 billion, and that grandmother understands that the money that is supposed to have been lost could have given us to boreholes, because he sees a borehole and he sees the importance. So how do you relate? So we are not saying that media is not doing bad, but the capacity just to relate things. I'm trying to simplify things and make people understand what is it that we are talking about. You know, today we are talking about cancer. Yes, cancer is killing. I mean, but if you leave it at that level, that cancer is only people, the big people who are dying of cancer, then there are so many people go to a local hospital. Those people are there. So how do you relate? And you can commission your journalists from the ground, KBC staff in Busia, to get a story of a person who died of cancer. Those case studies can then be used to tell the bigger problem that cancer is to this country. You know, so that people start to identify, oh, so and so.
Instead of just saying it's a national disaster.
In a national disaster, you know, so you detach people. When we are talking about hunger in the country or drought, how do we relate? Especially the story on climate change right now. We talk about climate change as if something in a basket somewhere. But climate change has affected. Go even whichever area, even harvesting time has changed. I mean, the food basket has in almost all the, I mean, but how do we talk about the story of climate change? is because we have detached, we have left it to a level of policy. Kenya has signed a climate change policy. It doesn't matter. But we've got what, for example, was traditional knowledge in managing hunger, in dealing with climate change. Because if you go slowly, you will see our traditional people used to have an indigenous way of dealing with climate change. They would farm one farm, then maybe miss 2 seasons, go to another farm. That was pure.
Yeah,
yes, but when we present it as if it's a new thing, climate change came because it was signed in Poland or wherever, then we miss the thing. So to me, the bigger thing is media journalism is not easy as people want to think. That you just get a clip on our subgroup and air. You just get a press release from communication people. Because we are told in class, a press release is just a tip of a story. But many of us just pick and return to sender. Just add your byline and you are done. But people need to
we need to be more relatable.
I mean, we need to put effort.
Yeah.
I got a press release, yes. But what does it mean? Call, make a call. I mean, I can tell you, somebody asked me a question when we learned about the death of Bob Colmer, for example. Somebody said, so what is news in this? You know, and I sat and I asked myself, I mean, in addition, he's a father, he's a parent, he's a corporate leader. You know, but in addition, remember he was just nominated the other day to sit on the cancer board. You know, you can't relate as a journalist that this person has, and then we are talking about the issue of cancer as a problem in this country. How do you, remember Safaricom has a big foundation, sponsorship foundation. For example, what does that maybe death relate? Can Safaricom, for example, within their thinking, start a cancer clinic? You know, the relation of relating one thing to the other sometimes means that we pick things at peak value and say so and so. So to me, I request journalists to do more, take their time, because journalism needs patience.
Yes.
Many of our journalists are not patient nowadays. You know, you get a story, in 2 seconds you are broken, then you notice I miss a lot. So let's be patient, let's dig, let's relate things. A politician might have said something. I remember an interview where somebody was hosting a senator from, and the journalist is asking the senator what she will do. She was a lady. And she's talking about bringing roads, bringing water. And I'm asking that journalist, that's not a role of a senator. Why are you allowing somebody to lie? Simply because as a host, you never even took time to understand what's a role. So that even if I'm misleading you, you have no capacity because you never prepared. So that preparation, that digging, media houses must invest in the research department. Like you are here hosting us. Who is helping you feed you in information that will keep the conversation? Because you don't know everything.
So there's more to it than just what you see.
You are seeing. So it's a teamwork. People must support you, and that will help in the public interest. We can relate the political stories to public issues and continue.
I'll have to cut you short due to the interest of time. Let me come to you. What more do you feel needs to be done? Just as he has said, you know, from putting in more time, more effort, going deeper, not being superficial. From the practitioner side of it.
Victor is a very good journalist.
And a minute.
Yeah, Victor is a very good journalist because from what he said, and that is what is lacking in journalism today. Journalism does not have the capacity to get into complex topics. It requires time, it requires some training, and I think I would want to challenge Victor here as the Media Council of Kenya. Perhaps that's an area they need to build capacity for journalists, because the world is becoming very technical. Climate change is a technical field. When you talk about cancer, it's a technical field. How many media houses, for instance, have invested in building their capacity for journalists to report on health issues? That's why politics becomes much easier to report. And some organizations are I know have gone out of their way because they are dealing with a very technical area, probably to build capacity for journalists. But remember, there's a very high turnover rate of journalism, or journalists. Then the question is, what do media houses doing to improve their capacity? So I think that's something that media houses need to do. And that's something as the Public Relations Society of Kenya, we realize that for us to be effective as communicators.
Briefly, 30 seconds.
Yes, for us to be effective as communicators, then we need to build the capacity for the media. And that's why we are in an engagement with the Media Council of Kenya to find out how do we build programs of building the capacity of media to report. We're not trying to infringe in the independence, but we need to build their capacity to report while we also level up our level of communication.
All right. And this is a discussion we cannot exhaust in this one sitting. We'll be having subsequent discussions and try and see the role of the media when it comes to how we report and what more we need to do. And even you as the consumer, what is it that you would like to hear and what is it that you feel needs to be done more? Because at the end of the day, we are not putting out news for the sake of putting it out, is for your consumption. And with that, we just want to put a cap on today's discussion. I have been speaking with Victor BWIRE, who is to my extreme left. He is the head of media development and strategy at the Media Council of Kenya. And next to me, we have Dr. WILFRED WARUBE, who is the president at the Public Relations Society of Kenya. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
Now, remember, we have a news check coming up in not too long. We'll be continuing with the development story, which is the passing of Safaricom CEO Bob Collymore, who passed on the early hours of this morning at around 2 a.m. at his home. He succumbed to acute leukemia, which he had been struggling with for quite some time, and we'll be keeping you up to date and bringing you more information as and when we get that information. So do keep it here to catch up with all that and so much more coming up in News Check. My name is Jane Wamboy. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Have a lovely day and God bless.